Well, a very warm welcome into this first ever live episode of the HuddleUK podcast. This is very much a trial run for us. Thank you very much to everyone who was getting involved and gets involved through the next hour when we dissect what's happening in the NFL, last week's games, look ahead to this week's games, and we'll put our credibility on the line, let's say, as we try and predict what will happen this point moving forward in the league. It's a fool's game, really. We'll look like mugs by the end of the season when we're wrong in every division. As always, I'm the host of the HuddleUK podcast, Philip Marsh. Thank you very much for joining us. Alongside me, as becoming a regular thing now, is our Buffalo Bills writer, Jake. Jake, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed.
Thank you
As
for
I
having
said,
me.
this is a nice little tester for us. If you are listening, if you are over on YouTube, that's where we're trialing this for the first time. If you've got any questions for myself or Jake that you want answered, whether they be fantasy football questions, we do love our fantasy football, or just in general, who we think are going to win games, players moving forward, that sort of stuff, let us know. Well, just start off is the right place to start off in the history and go back to last week's games. There were some really wacky games last week. And the one I want to start with, I know the Dolphins have already played since on Thursday Night Football. That was a bit of a back to reality, really, for them,
Yeah.
losing to the Ravens quite comfortably, really. And the Ravens are a team that we'll get onto a bit later on in this episode. But they annihilated the Atlanta Falcons last week, and I put it on our WhatsApp group and on the Huddle UK's social media accounts. I don't know what the Atlanta Falcons are. I can't quite work them out as a team because when you look at them on paper, they seem like quite a good side. They have a lot of the right pieces. Granted, Kirk Cousins was playing in this game, but even for a Kirk Cousins team, this was an appalling showing from the same team that beat the Buffalo Bills a few weeks previous. So I guess the question is, are the Atlanta Falcons a good team? And it's a very hard question to start things off, but that's what I'm going to throw you to start.
Yeah, I think it's really odd, right? So, just looking at who the Atlanta Falcons have beaten, they seem to beat teams that are good on paper and lose to teams that are bad on paper. The Bucks aside, they've managed to beat the Vikings, who at the time I think that still had JJ McCarthy. They beat the Commanders and then they beat the Bills. And then they've lost to the Panthers, the Dolphins, and what is left of the 49ers at the time, the Mac Jones 49ers. So, yeah, I don't know. I've seen a lot of rhetoric about Raheem Morris and whether he's the right guy. And I think you can understandably look at that division being wide open. The Saints and Panthers just aren't putting it together. And I think Arthur Blank probably expected to be competing with the Buccaneers this season. So, yeah, I don't think they're good, is my answer.
Yeah, I'm gutted to be honest because I thought they were going to be really fun this year, and they have shown their moments of being fun. I know
Yeah.
I can't remember, it's the Barstool Sports I think does their sort of rankings at the end of each week, and they have fun but frisky, and I feel like that's where the Falcons fall quite a lot of the time, and then other weeks they're just really not fun to watch at all. Harry, who's the Huddle UK's Falcons writer, sort of, rightly summed up the mood after that game. And, there were a lot of cries for Raheem Morris, the head coach, to be fired off the back of that game. And, the Falcons season hasn't been as bad as the Dolphins or the Jets and some other
Nope.
teams. But those sort of defeats, like, it was the manner of it, I think, as well, to lose to a team that were, 1-6 at the time at home, to concede 34 points to Tua turn the ball over. Do you know what I mean? The 4 touchdowns he scored. Do you think that's worthy of a firing? So quite one and done.
Well, I think you've got to kind of look at it a little bit deeper than that. I think obviously the question marks around this roster and the construction is probably the bigger piece than actually whether or not Raheem Morris is maybe the right coach. I think we've quickly forgotten that Kirk Cousins is sat on the roster getting paid $45 million per season to be backup, but he obviously played last week and looked like a man who hadn't played in the best part of 2 years, coming off an Achilles rupture. We are seeing that Michael Penix has some kind of teething issues. I don't think anyone has been particularly excited and enthused by the play that he's seen. That does lie with Raheem Morris. But one thing that you do need for a rookie quarterback is you do need to be able to protect him. which I think they're doing a fine job with, and you do need to surround him with talent, which I think they've done a fine job with. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. There's not a better supporting cast than that. So there are question marks on, kind of at the doorstep of Raheem Morris. But I do also think that if I'm a Falcons fan and I'm looking at the albatross around my neck that is the Kirk Cousins contract, thinking we could have done so much more if we'd kind of committed to Penix in a slightly different way, use that, kind of use that cap in a different way. Look at how the Washington Commanders have set themselves up now for the next probably at least 3 years before Jaden Daniels is coming off of his nice, reasonable cap hit. That's probably what they had in mind, but obviously instead they've got the Kirk Cousins, who he doesn't seem particularly kind of motivated to change that, and why would you? So yeah, I think it's a half roster construction that I would look at that, and half I don't think the coaching has really been up to up to where it should be.
Yeah, we'll mention Kirk Cousins a bit later as well, because I just want to touch on a few potential trade candidates at the end of this episode. He's a name, obviously, that's been floated around a lot due to his contract and situation with the Falcons. You mentioned Bijan Robinson, potentially the biggest fantasy or DFS bust of the season last week in that game. I know you are writer for the website of our DFS picks, and last week some absolute smash hits. Looking at the list here, Troy Franklin. I don't know if it's Chimere. I'm not sure how you pronounce the first name, but DK, the wide receiver for the Titans. James Cook, you had absolutely smash hits, and then I think Zero to Hero would probably be an apt name for this team, because there were some heroes, but there was an absolute zero in Jake Ferguson, who was mine and your tight end.
Killed me.
Hero of fantasy and DFS this season, who got absolutely 0 points on National Tight End Day when so many other tight ends popped up with touchdowns. And then Bijan Robinson, I think he just scraped 4 points in that game, lost a fumble as well. Yeah, a real surprise, that one. And we'll move on from the Falcons because they confuse all living hell out of me. The other big game of last week was the Jets finally getting a win. Who would have thought that a Justin Fields, Joe Flacco head-to-head game would have turned into the shootout of the season, potentially 39-38. What I quite like is, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to anyone, but because this is what we're all like as fans, but we often see it through the lenses of our own team. And Dan, who's our Jets writer for HuddleUK, and Sean, who's our Bengals writer, their write-ups post-game, you would think you'd have seen two different games from reading them. And I completely understand it. I'm exactly the same when it comes to the Chargers, and I'm sure you're the same when it comes to the Bills. Because Sean, all he wanted to focus on was the horror show. That was our Halloween special on HuddleUK yesterday, was the Bengals horror show on defense. Whereas Dan wanted to focus on the fact that Justin Fields, put in the performance of the season, and, the comeback he made after all the criticism in the week. So, both sides are true. Both are true that Justin Fields played his best game. Breece Hall, I've got a soft spot for Breece Hall. I love Breece Hall. He had his game of the season. That touchdown throw to Mason Taylor should never be thrown. If you see the way he throws it, Mason Taylor's completely covered.
Yeah.
You would never, ever tell anyone to throw that pass, and yet somehow here we are. That it's one of them, their first win of the season. But I lean the side of this is more the Bengals defense is atrocious than the Jets offense had a good day. But, because this is without Garrett Wilson as well. So would you agree with that this is more just the Bengals can't defend anyone?
The Bengals can't defend anyone. That's been the case now for at least over a season and a half, if not probably longer if you were to go back into 2023. I didn't expect it to be so bad that they make the Jets offense look quite so competent. I'm willing to put a large amount of money on the fact that this Jets team will not put up 39 in another game this season. And I'm quite confident of that. Given what we saw in London and the horror show that was, I don't think anyone, including the better markets, would have seen this. I think what's really frustrating for Bengals fans is probably that Flacco came in, and I don't think there was much fanfare over Flacco coming in. And actually, he's been really good. And he's proven me slightly wrong. I wouldn't say I was necessarily going to die on the hill of whether Flacco was going to be good or not, but I wasn't exactly, changing my tune around what the Bengals' season was going to be as a result. But actually, he's been absolutely fine, and he was fine in this game. It's the defense again that really struggled to get a stop on a Jets offense that just. I mean, we were talking going into this week as well, where the only reason why Justin Fields started this game is because Tyrod Taylor, the backup, traditionally,
Yes.
wasn't fit enough. What sort of vote of confidence is that in your offense and your quarterback that you're going, we want to bench our quarterback, but unfortunately our backup is injured? That is not a conundrum that an offensive coordinator really wants to be getting into. So the Bengals just allowed that team to not only beat them but also come back. And I think that's the big concern is when you're playing with a lead, a defense really needs to be able to adjust. It's one thing to stop a team, it's another thing to stop that team when you know that you don't actually need to stop them. You just need to slow them down and allow them to not make it all the way up the field that quickly. And that's exactly what they allowed them to do. So yeah, I think I'm sorry, but I'm kind of closing the book on the Bengals this year. I know probably most people did when Burrow was injured, but it's a crying shame what they're doing to some of the star players. We're going to remember Jamar Chase at the end of his career as a legendary, probably Hall of Fame player. But it will not be at this current rate, whilst on this Bengals outfit under the Mike Brown administration. It's not going to be because he won multiple Super Bowls in clutch fashion. It's going to be because in garbage time, he's racked up an insane number of catches and touchdowns while against backups and things like that. And I think that's a crying shame.
I'm going to see if I can get up this stat quickly, but I sent it to you guys
Yeah.
after that game of the number of targets he's on for. Here we go. If over the course, extrapolated over the course of the season, if it was Flacco and Jamar Chase, Chase would be in line for 308 targets on the season, which is absolutely insane. He's had 12, 23, and 19 targets these last 3 weeks. So my other fear as well is that he's going to, it's not sustainable, that workload for Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
You keep throwing the ball that much, and one of them's going to be a hospital pass. And the last thing any Bengals fan wants to see is Jamar Chase go down for the season because Flacco and him are keeping this team at least entertaining at times on offense.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say relevant then, but I
No,
think
no,
3 and
entertaining.
5. Yeah.
Because that game against the Steelers on Thursday Night Football the week before was, they've had two cracking games, but from a neutral's perspective, both of those games, thrillers. And I know Sean, our Bengals writer, was out in Cincy for that game against the Steelers and had a whale of a time, and it looked fantastic. But that's because they came on the right side of it. If you were at the Jets game and you were on the other side of it, it would have been awful. So, a tough one for the Bengals. As you say, I don't think they're going to be relevant this season. It is a crying shame when you look at the players that they seem to be wasting the talent on that team. But that's the NFL. The one final point, and I don't want to dwell on it because it is awful. But I just want to mention it. The injury on Sunday to Cam Scatterboo. I think I can't recall an injury which has been so across the NFL, regardless of who you support. Just a gut wrench, like a sucker punch for everyone. This kid coming through was lighting up the NFL with his own unique style. A lot of jokes have been made at his expense, but from the podcast we did, speaking to his high school coach from Rio Linda, it sounds like this is just a very intelligent guy who just puts his absolute everything onto the field, and you can see that in the way he played. So to see that injury against the Eagles on Sunday was a killer. I'm sure Cam Scatterboo doesn't watch this podcast, but if on the off chance he or his head coach, former head coach or teammates are watching this, please get better soon. I mean, it was horrible to see, and the whole of the NFL is behind him getting back. I just hope it doesn't impact him long term. Obviously not going to play again this season.
I think I think if you're looking for silver linings in this, obviously unfortunately the NFL is a business first primarily, and a results based one at that, which taking out the humanity of it, awful injury. Obviously you could see how much it affected his teammates, affected us. I think as soon as we saw what had happened. And and in our messages in kind of our group, it kind of hit different to other injuries because of the attitude that he's brought into the league. He's been one of those storylines. I think from a business side though, irrespective of what happens to Dable and Joe Shane, Scatterbo is a relatively affordable running back in his rookie season. So he can afford to almost take his time to get back to where he needs to be over the next probably season. I'd maybe not expect him to be back for week one, but actually, having said that, it really depends on kind of the ligaments within the ankle, which obviously we don't know a lot of yet on what his timescale would be. But what I mean by all of this is that he's going to be scheme, system, coach agnostic. It would be unlikely that if a new coach comes in over the next couple of years, and I think that actually there's a scenario where Dable doesn't get fired at the end of the season,
Yeah, I would agree.
because what ultimately happened is him and Shane drafted Jackson Dart, hoping that Dart, if Dart didn't work out, then it was going to be curtains. It still could be, but I think there's a chance here that they say, right, well, we've seen Dable bring through someone like Josh Allen, so let's let him ride this one out and see how far he can take Dart. And I think that Scatterbo is still going to be on his rookie deal, a season and a half from now. We see, if you look at someone like Najee Harris, for example, he's probably the case in point. He took a 1-year deal for the Chargers, as you know, and unfortunately that injury is going to massively impact his future within the NFL, as we kind of often see. So I do think Cam will be fine, and I do hope that, that everything's kind of intact enough that he doesn't have any long-standing issues there, because he is a storyline that I'm sure Goodell will want in Big Blue moving forwards.
Yeah, 100%. So get well soon to Cam, and I'm sure Giants fans and NFL fans in general will want to see him back on the field sooner rather than later. That's sort of the roundup of the highlights from Week 8. We haven't had any questions come in yet on over on the chat on YouTube. If you are watching this, get your questions in, whatever team you might be. If you fancy getting our take on how your team will play this weekend, or how you think we think they'll do, star players, anything like that, let us know, and we'll try and answer your questions for you. We're going to move on. We're halfway through the season now. We're heading into week 9. Obviously, there's still the games to go this weekend, but things are sort of playing out. We've got an idea now of who the contenders are, who the pretenders are, for the most part. For the most part, but there are still plenty of divisions that are really close. Today, as I said, we're going to put our what reputations we have, on the line and try and predict all 8 divisions. Some are going to be far easier than others, for who we think is going to come out on top come the end of the regular season. Let's start in the AFC. That just makes sense alphabetically, and we'll go around the sort of how you learn the compass: north, south, east, and west. So we'll start in the AFC North. I mentioned right at the top that we're going to talk about the Ravens, because the Ravens won on Thursday Night Football. They looked very good. Lamar Jackson didn't look at his very best. You could still see there was some sort of sense of hesitation before he was taking off. He wasn't in his free-flowing, MVP level, but was still more than good enough to beat the Dolphins, who looked, as I said, back to reality, unfortunately, which is what I sent Lee, our Dolphins writer. He's not enjoying the season, it's fair to say. So as things stand, the Steelers are top at 4-3. Then you have the Bengals and the Ravens at 3-5, and then the Browns at the bottom at 2-6. Would it be a fair assumption to say that you're in the same camp as me, that you think that the market's the market for a reason, and that the Ravens will ultimately win this division?
They've got pedigree, haven't they? They just need to all be on the field at the same time. I know they've had some challenges, but is anyone really that optimistic? I think the Steelers have been exactly what we thought the Steelers might be. We haven't come in and been surprised by what Aaron Rodgers has done. He's thrown go balls to DK Metcalf, and is a statue in the pocket, and they've had to protect him, and that's fine. I think the defense hasn't exactly been particularly phenomenal either side. It's not a vaunted defense by any stretch. So I think it is wide open. I'm completely ruling out, obviously, the Browns and the Bengals from this conversation. So it's really about, what do we see the Ravens can improve to? They've obviously had their they've obviously had their bye. So yeah, I think with that in mind, I think that it does look like the Ravens, they're just not far back. Like it's bizarre. But Phil, let me ask you this then: how many? What would the Steelers' record need to be for you to feel like they've got enough in the tank to see this through?
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it? 4-3 at the moment. I think the Ravens are going to get to double-digit wins. So I think if the Steelers want to win the division, I think they've got to be at 11 wins probably
Yeah,
to clinch it. So can I see the Steelers winning another 7 games this season? That's the question, isn't it? And you look at the teams that they have coming up. They have the Bills, they have the Ravens twice, they have the Lions, they have the Chargers and the Colts. This is a really tough rest of season for the Steelers. Okay, they play the Bengals, they play the Bears, they play the Dolphins, but I think the schedule is not on the Steelers' side here. Not that the Ravens have got a supremely easy schedule themselves, but give me games against the Jets and the Vikings. They've got to play the Bengals twice as well. So yeah, I think the Ravens have got a slightly easier schedule. They're only 1 win behind as things stand, and obviously those divisional games are going to be so huge. So yeah, I lean. This all obviously hinges on Lamar though. This all hinges on Lamar. If Lamar Jackson's out, then I think we saw a really genuinely good performance from
yeah.
the all pro. No, that's steady Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley.
Don't no. I technicalities. Okay,
He's a
technicalities.
pro bowler. I don't care. He is, and that's
He's
a
an
fact.
he's an alternate. He's an
He's an
alternate.
alternate, but
Yeah,
hey, that's more than lots of quarterbacks can claim to have
it's
been.
outrageous.
Yeah, it is one of the more bizarre ones that. But he put in a really good performance. That was against the Bears, wasn't it? 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and that game, I think. Well, we'll talk about the Bears in a bit when we get to the NFC. But that was a real indictment on where they are for me. That game,
Mm.
that you can't beat a banged up Ravens team with Snoop Huntley. I thought that was. I was very much riding the Caleb Williams trains 4 straight wins, and then that happened, and I'm
Mm.
firmly off it now. Anyway, that's another division. But yeah, I think this is a Ravens. The Ravens is to lose, but if Lamar goes down, then I think the old unk in Aaron Rodgers will probably, at that point, you would probably only need 9 wins, and I think that the Steelers would probably edge it then. So yeah, it's a shootout between those two, but as long as Lamar's healthy, that's the way I lead. One of the easier ones, I don't think we don't have to spend too much time on this one. I don't think the AFC South.
Okay.
The Colts are 7-1, then the Jags are 4-3, Texans are 3-4, and Titans are abysmal at 1-7.
Mm.
Most Titans fans are ready for this season to be over. I tip my hat to you if you're a Titans fan and you watch those games every week. I say that now, and this is the weekend that they'll win because they're playing my team, and
No.
I've just taken a shot at them. I don't think we need to go into this. The Colts are probably the best team in football right now. We talked about
Yeah.
that last week. The metrics back this up. They're on a 4-game win streak. The one loss they had was very narrow to a good team in the Rams. They're 5-0 at home. I guess the quick question is: do you think that either the Jags or the Texans could be a playoff team behind the Colts?
I think the Jags can be there. I think if you're asking me that, they have to play these other teams in their division. The Texans can be a slippery beast because of the fact that defense is solid. And so if you're a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars and your offense isn't particularly strong, those units facing off could well result in a Texan win. But having said that, the Titans are a bit of a walkover. So if you're asking me, could the Jags get to 9-8? Can we see the Jags winning another 5 games? I know they've just lost Travis Hunter for a period of time.
Yeah, you beat to it.
But could they get 9-8? Could they get kind of 10-7? I could see that in a weaker division with a slightly favourable kind of schedule as they likely have due to the weakness and where they finished last season. So I could see them getting a wild card spot certainly. I don't see them necessarily going far, but give Liam Cohen his flowers. He's come in. They've already got as many wins as I think they had last season. Didn't they? They had a 4-win season last year, didn't they?
I think so, but I'm going to double check that while
You
you
can double
keep
check that for
talking.
me. This is the perk of doing it live. So I think like if you're a Jags fan, you're probably happy come the end of the season to be, 9-8, 10-7. 10-7, I think double-digit wins for the Jags would be a success story to build on. I think there's just a lot shrouding that team at the moment. What's going on with Brian Thomas? Travis Hunter's now down. Is the defense good? It's been good. Is it here to stay, or is it something that's going to get found out and slowly deteriorate over the course of the season as teams start to adapt to how they line up? I think the Colts are going to walk this division comfortably, barring any major injuries across the O-line or to Jonathan Taylor. And quarterback now as well. Because let me ask you this actually: if you put Anthony Richardson into this Colts team, I know he's got his orbital fracture, so he's not. But if you did put him in now, do the Colts still win the division?
That's a really good question, and I think I say no. But
Oh,
I think no. But I just think his game management is awful. And whilst Jonathan Taylor is playing at an MVP level, and for me is the current, if the season ended today, is the MVP, you still need to be able to pass the ball sometimes, and Richardson can't. From what we've seen, he it just isn't good enough. So, Riley Leonard, he's the guy.
yeah.
Do you know what? I would stick Riley Leonard in over Anthony Richardson. Maybe I'm a lunatic, but I'm fully done with Anthony. That experiment has been seen. It failed, and I wouldn't have said this in the summer. In the summer, like I was discussing with Ed and Rondo last week, in the summer, it would have been, you go with Richardson. He was your guy. You drafted him fourth overall. But when you see what Daniel Jones has done to this team, most of the parts are the same as what Richardson was dealing with, and couldn't get them even competitive. So yeah, I'm out on Richardson, and okay, looking at it, maybe that was a hasty reaction to say that they couldn't still win the division with Richardson because they do have that 3-game lead, but I wouldn't feel confident in any manner of speaking. I just want to mention the Texans because you said, can the Jags get to 9 wins? Potentially, because they all have to play each other, and as you say, it's not a great division. But I think the Texans are if you said to me it's £100, you've got to put it on the Jags or the Texans right now. I think I would lean Texans, even though they've got a slightly harder schedule, just because of how good their defense is. I was just looking through the numbers in the NFL. Some of the defenses that we think have been elite this year, the Broncos have allowed 50 points more than the Texans. The Texans have allowed the fewest points of any team at 103. Most teams are above 150 comfortably. The Rams are next at 117, and then I think everyone else is over 130. So to concede just 103, it is very, very impressive. Derek Stingley is one of the best, if not the best, corners in the league. That front seven, Will Anderson Jr., I think, is just an absolute wrecking ball and will be very good for many, many years to come. I think I probably overreacted when I was talking to our friend Bo the other day, but the way that people talk about Myles Garrett and his longevity to just constantly create pressure, I think Will Anderson will only get better. The older he gets and the stronger he gets. I just think he's going to be a dominant force for this Texans team or whoever he plays for years to come. So, yeah, I think just because of the Texans defense, I would give him the edge over the Jags, particularly now without Travis Hunter. Well, he's on IR, isn't it? But it sounds like it could be potentially season ending. So yeah, which would be horrid. And it was good to see him get his first touchdown when we were at Wembley the other day, and he looked really bright in that second half. So that would be a real shame for Liam Cohen's side. But I agree with you that Cohen has done a good job. They already have the same number of wins. You were spot on with that as they had last season with 4. So they're on an upwards trajectory. I think that'll be a real close one to see which one of those two teams comes out. But we are in agreement that the Colts dominate that division.
Would you like to just quickly, Phil, indulge me on this one, because this one is something we can torture Tom with, our good friend, good friend of the pod. So had the Colts not drafted Anthony Richardson, where else they could have gone, and would they now have reached the dizzying heights of 7-1 at this point with another position? Now, their only other option at quarterback, realistically, would have been to take Will Levis at the turn of the round. Obviously, that's not what they would have done with the 4th overall pick, which they used on Anthony Richardson. That pick could have been used on either Devon Witherspoon at corner
Yeah,
or
who's
Christian Gonzalez. How much would you love to see either of those cornerbacks lining up for that team right now? They could have put Jalen Carter next to DeForest Buckner. That would have been really, really enjoyable. The whole host of offensive linemen.
you know
Are,
who I'd have taken? You know who I'd have taken?
I know you would have taken Jackson
We,
Smith and
we
Jigba.
fully glazed this person like
Yeah.
Krispy Kreme last week, but
Uh,
yeah, I would have taken JSN
yeah.
because that the wide receiver room is very good, and this isn't a knock on Josh Downs or Alec Pierce or Michael Pittman, who made the catch of the week for me last week. That touchdown grab was insane. I've never seen someone be so manhandled and still make a grab. It was excellent. Actually, someone I saw on YouTube described it not in the same talent of the catch, but that OBJ catch, the famous one, where
Yeah.
he's just being pulled, and it's the most obvious, blatant defensive pass interference you've seen, and yet somehow he's still come away with a catch. So, yeah, it had shades of that for me. But yeah, I'd have taken JSN. But they would never have taken Bijan. That was that draft as well, wasn't it?
No.
Because they had Jonathan Taylor, obviously. But yeah, Devon Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez.
1-2 punch with Devon Achan maybe. That would have been. I mean, obviously he was drafted far, far later. But I honestly think like the only other quarterback that they could have really taken in that draft from the position that they were in, much, much later, which would have been a good option potentially. If you're an Eagles fan, you'll say that Tanner McKee has a potential bright future within the NFL. That would have been something maybe worth seeing with a late pick. They drafted him in the 6th, the Eagles. So who knows? But yeah, I just it's always a sliding door moment where you look at it and go, well, what could have been? Who could we have taken instead? As a Bills fan, we've had that time and again. The Chiefs like to remind us of that with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, and all of that. So there you go.
I can't believe you didn't mention the likes of Clayton Tune and Aidan O'Connell in that draft as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think O'Connell's back. He is back. When we get to the Raiders, we can discuss. That because there might be a route to him seeing game time this season at this rate.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker was another one that I had high hopes for in that draft, and you never know. Where is he now as well? I can't even remember where he's gone. I know that he's not on the Lions team anymore, but
The Stetson Bennett's yet to see the field. Like this draft was a whole host of
they're
guys
all
who,
simmering. They're waiting. They're all waiting
yeah,
for their chance. These guys,
and they're all really old already. Hendon Hooker is about to turn 28.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's right. He's at the Panthers. Yeah, because that's right. I knew that he'd come to my mind recently. It's because I was watching Andy Dalton get physically mauled by the Bills on Sunday, and thinking, "I'll just give Hendon Hooker a try. Can it be worse than this?" I think that was Andy Dalton's. You've been great. You've been brilliant for the NFL.
thank you.
Is in top 20 in lots of metrics all the time, but call it a day now, pal. It's done. You've run
Yeah.
your course. You've been excellent. Please don't get attacked like you did on Sunday. It was I mean, for you as a Bills fan, I'm sure it was great, but it wasn't fun for anyone else to watch. AFC East. We're going to hit our two teams in the next two. The AFC East is a bit like the AFC North in that it's a straight shootout between two teams. The
Yeah.
Dolphins and the Jets we can completely disregard in this conversation. The question is, can the Patriots hold on to this one-win lead that they have over the Bills, or are the preseason favourites, one of the Super Bowl favourites, your team, the Buffalo Bills, going to catch them up? I would say yes. I think if I had the money and I was putting it on this division right now, I would say that the Buffalo Bills go on to win the division. I think that they'll probably win the rematch when the two sides play again on the 14th of December. But the Patriots have looked so good. Drake May, he is probably how everyone talked about CJ Stroud in his rookie season of this is going to be the next top 5 quarterback. That's where everyone is on with Drake May right now. I've seen people saying he's a top 3 quarterback. I'm not quite ready to go that far with him right now, but easily top 10, top 5 conversation from how he's been performing this year. So as a Buffalo Bills fan, it must be terrifying to watch this. After years of Patriots dominance in this division, to finally go, okay, they're rubbish. Gerard Mayo's they're in the dumps. They're on this downward trajectory, and suddenly this season, Mike Vrabel's got them playing excellent football. Drake May looks like a bona fide NFL star. You must be concerned.
Well, yeah, yes and no in many ways. So I think what the Patriots have done really, really well is what pressure is on Drake May this season. Realistically, the team performed so poorly last season, and what they have done very, very well. Credit to the organisation. They sacrificed Jacoby Brissett in body and spirit last season in favour of Drake May. In something that the Vikings just did with Carson Wentz, by the way, and people were not happy about it. So why, I don't know, because Wentz has had his trials and tribulations. Jacoby Brissett didn't really deserve that last year. Particularly when you've got Gerard Mayo coming out and saying things like he can basically take hits better than Drake May. What did that tell your team? So they've done a great job since drafting May of not necessarily surrounding him with talent, although that has improved this season, but in protecting him and not allowing the pressure to really get to him. And I think when you look at, again, I mentioned the Vikings, there's a lot of pressure on JJ McCarthy with where the Vikings, were last season with Darnold, for him to come in and really try and achieve that, coming off the back of an injury. None of that pressure for Drake May. No one expected them to necessarily win the division. They probably would have been happy with a wild card berth. Things were really poor. They just wanted to bed in the Mike Vrabel system. So I think for me, they've created that culture themselves in many cases, but it's also formed with who they've actually played. They've played the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Steelers, the Panthers, the Saints, the Titans, and the Browns. Is there a game in there that actually the Patriots shouldn't be winning? Other than the Bills. Sorry, they've also played the Bills in there.
I was going to say, you left that one out.
I left out my own team because I thought they were the very obvious one that everybody is aware of. That was kind of a bit of a coming out game. But I think I saw a statistic recently that said, Drake May hasn't had to. He's something like 1-9 when it comes to needing to lead fourth quarter comebacks. When he's asked to throw more than 26 passes, I think he's he generally doesn't have a winning record. The Patriots haven't asked much of Drake May, so what he's given them is very, very good. And if you can get more out of him. But my question is look at Jackson Dart, for example. Jackson Dart is a handful of starts in. He's won games for the Giants so far. The Giants have put him in a terrible situation, and he, through his own skill set, has actually helped them win games. He's also technically cost them games with the Broncos result. You get that with a rookie quarterback. So before we go and say that Drake May is playing at an MVP level, we haven't seen him do MVP things, quite frankly. Like, he's statistically very good, but when you look at, I think it's very disrespectful to the likes of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Mahomes over the last couple of years, and other MVP candidates, even Saquon, who was breaking records along the way, to turn around and go, well, Drake May has won 6 games this season, and at no point has he had to, really turn that game around. What Josh Allen did to the Ravens, for example, was freaky in week 1. Where's Drake May doing that? And I might get a little bit of kind of throwback on that, but it's true. And I'm not saying Drake May's not capable of doing that. I'm just saying that before we talk about him as an MVP candidate, I think that what we're seeing is him blossoming in his second season, and that's great to see. But I think we're a little way away from that entirely. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I think a large part of it is because of the way the NFL media with the Patriots are a bit of their darling. I'll say that as a Bills fan because Josh Allen gets a lot of favourable attention, but they're a big market team because of their history and their pedigree, and the NFL probably does want them to have a successful quarterback. The stories sell, and it's what the league ultimately wants, is to entertain Patriots fans who have been away for 3 seasons and they feel like they've been in the desert for 40 days. And I think there's the Jets fan base must be looking at the Patriots going, what are you talking about? But there you go. So, I'm off my soapbox now, but I just think that I want to see more from Drake May at a personal level, before we go and anoint him as the MVP this season and beyond. I think there's a lot of playoff matchups that the Patriots could get in. If they don't go and get a bye, there's a good number of playoff matchups that I think the Patriots, whether they have home field advantage or not, they may not even go into that as the favourites. There's a lot of ball to play between now and then, but I have my reservations still on them.
I think just looking at their schedule, they do have to play the Dolphins, the Jets twice, the Falcons and the Bengals and the Giants. On paper, the only tough games they have are the Ravens, if Lamar is still healthy come late December, the Bills again, and the Bucks. Other than that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 very, very winnable games. And I do hear what you're saying about Drake May. But if he is this, improving game manager when he's winning games they should win, they should finish on 12 wins as a minimum here. So just quickly, because we do need to move on.
Yeah.
Do you think the Bills win the division?
No, so I don't. So that might seem contrary.
Drake May, we've gone over the top, but they are going to win the division.
Yeah, that might seem contrary. I don't think that it's because I think that they're like you say, May is doing an excellent job game managing. I don't think it's about the Patriots. I think that they're fine. They've got an easier schedule. They're going to hit double-digit wins. I have my concerns about the Bills. I've obviously voiced them previously. The injuries are mounting up. Losing Ed Oliver for the season now is exactly not what that run defense needed. There's serious question marks over the Bills. So I am more concerned about the Bills putting it together for the rest of their schedule than I am about the Patriots. That's QB agnostic. That's just simply, regardless of how well May and Allen play, that's on paper, schedules and the direction that both these teams' noses are pointing. So, I think the Patriots will claim the division, and I think then the Bills will probably claim a wild card.
Cool, interesting. I think that's where we disagree on the first time on who wins one. I think that I don't know. Maybe that's just when we were talking about betting markets and what history tells you in the last few years. I just think the Bills will come good, but. Yeah, the Patriots schedule is very, very nice. This is where we're going to have a little bit of debate, and the reason I wanted to move on because I think this one will cause.
This one's the big one.
Well, it's the big one because I think this is the first division that we're going to come to where there are plausibly 3 correct answers. If you look at the other divisions we've covered, the Bills and Patriots are on 5 and 6 wins. The next is on 2. The AFC North, we disregarding the Bengals and the Browns. There's only 2 teams in it. The AFC South is the Colts. But in the AFC West, the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs, you've got 5-win team, 5-win team, 6-win team. And the team on paper, probably the least favoured team, which is the LA Chargers, are 3-0 in the division. They've swept the division in the first 3 weeks. So they always have that tiebreaker. So they don't even need to win more games. They just need to win the same number of games.
Yeah.
So they have that as their advantage, even though on paper they're probably the least favoured of these 3 teams. My team, I hope that doesn't prove to be the case. But I think this is such even trying to take off the bias hat here, this going forward for the rest of the season is one of the most competitive and interesting divisions. There's there's one in the the NFC, which I think is as interesting. But this is a real interesting division. So I'll just firstly get your thoughts, because I think you know the way I'm going to go here because I'm stubborn. But if anyone's ever listened to the HuddleUK podcast, you know who I'm going to say, because I am stubborn, and once I make a preseason prediction, I'm riding and dying on that. But this is the Chiefs to lose, is it?
Yeah. Can I just say, by the way, I thought of this, but I haven't seen someone ride a Bronco this long since OJ. Okay, so. Yeah, you're on the Broncos still. I don't blame you. I think that they will get better over the course of the season. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to see how long Pat Surtain is out for. I think Riley Moss is having a really strange season. I think last season he was excellent. This season he's so penalised.
Yeah,
so penalised. And they really need to tighten that up. But obviously we're closing the door on the Raiders. When you said plausibly 3 teams, I was like, he's not going to try and squeeze a fourth in here.
No,
He's
no, no,
obviously
no, no.
talking about the Chargers.
No, I'm an optimistic Chargers fan. I'm not an unrealistic
Yeah.
NFL fan. I'm sorry to Raiders fans, but in fact, there's a story going up live later today, written by Liam, who's our Raiders writer. We were having a bit of a chat last night because he was lacking a bit of inspiration to write about the Raiders, and I sort of suggested that he write a story about how the Raiders, in all of this chaos, still managed to lose on their bye week last week, which really takes some doing for a team because all 3 of the AFC West teams won their games last week. So even as the Raiders were having, it's a nice week off, they lost ground entirely on the division and any hopes of
Yeah.
maybe running into a playoff place with a late run. You signing Tyler Lockett, is their hope? No, the hope's gone. So no, I don't think this is a 4-horse race. I think this is firmly a 3-horse race. And as I say, you can make an argument for all 3. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted. Who is your...
No, I started talking about the Raiders, so that's on me. So I think obviously I mentioned on last week's pod that the Chiefs are the kind of the ascending team statistically. They look really good. They had their, I think their fans went into meltdown around week 5 when the Chiefs didn't have a kind of a winning record at that point, something that was completely alien to most modern Chiefs fans. Anyone who's watched the NFL for a long period of time will remember that actually that was never the case. But I do think that, I like the balance that the Broncos have across their entire team. But I do think that the Chargers, with, like you said, their tiebreak over the other teams. They've also, one thing that Harbour has done really well is he's set the Chargers up to play the division really well. He's not naive to the fact that in order to come out of this division, in particular during this era of Peyton coaching one side, Reed in Kansas. He's set them up against their divisional foes really, really well for that exact reason. I think that the Chargers could get fit again and surprise a lot of people. And also Jim Harbaugh teams consistently get better and better and better the more time that he's got on task. So I am expecting the Chargers to finish with a better record, barring anything too substantial injury-wise, with a better record than they did last year, which would suggest that they do go on and seriously challenge for the division. So I actually, my head says the Chiefs because why wouldn't it? But actually, if I was to really lean into if we sit here next April and we look back at 2025 and you say, well, the Chargers finished better than they did in 2024, and that's because they added certain key pieces, I'd go, well, yeah, of course they did. That just makes so much sense. So, I like the Chargers personally. I think that with that tie break, and the vibe seems to be changing. When was the last time anybody spoke about chargering things up and throwing games? You're talking about losing to the Titans. You're talking about losing to the Titans, and there's been that kind of rhetoric seems to have gone almost since Harbour has come in. So yeah, I like them for the division. I just really don't want to have to say the Chiefs because I thought we had a turning point. My hot take for the season was that the Chiefs would start to fall off a bit of a cliff and because the Chargers and the Broncos would be so solid, I thought the Chiefs might slip out of the playoffs altogether. That was a hot take, admittedly, but
have
that
the
doesn't
Chiefs
seem to be the
played the
case.
Broncos yet? I don't know if they have. No, they haven't. They still have the Broncos to play twice, and obviously the Chargers to play as well in December again, and the Bills and the Colts and the Texans defense. The end of schedule for the Chiefs is rough. The next 3 games are the Bills, the Broncos, the Colts, and even the game after that, the Cowboys. The Cowboys will concede 30 points, but they'll probably score 30 points because that's just how they're rolling at the moment. That was, again, not to keep riding the Bronco, but that game, the comeback against the Giants was all well and good, and people were like, Bo Nix broke loads of like fourth quarter records in that game, but they got lucky that game. There's no two ways about it. If Jackson Dart had just had a bit more ball security and game management, the Giants should have seen that game out. But the game against the Cowboys last Sunday was I think the biggest statement one for me,
Yeah.
because they made Dak Prescott, who everyone was talking about playing at an MVP level, one of the best of his career. George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb's back. Javonte Williams is really good. He's going to go. What was his quote? It was the strangest quote of the season from Javonte Williams.
I can't say
I
it
think
on the
I'm not sure if
internet.
this is PC, but I think he said he was going to go back to Denver and give them his girth.
They will feel his
They will
girth.
feel his girth. Javonte, man.
He meant thighs, right? He
I
meant
don't know
thighs.
if this is a UK US thing, but you don't say that. You don't say that.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on. Yeah. They shut down for a long time that Cowboys offense, and a Cowboys offense which, as we talked about last week, is one of the offense. Just strictly talking about the offense, was one of the
Yeah.
best in the league, and the Broncos the Broncos offense looked twice as destructive and dynamic as their offense, and they shut down the Cowboys. So I thought that was a real statement last week. It was the first time where, because I keep saying that I'm going to stick with the Broncos, but even there's been a part of me going, it's the Chiefs. Oh, Joe Alt's back for the Chargers, and then I was
Yeah.
was going into that game last Sunday thinking, I feel like the Cowboys could do them here. And then having watched it, I'm now firmly back on. I think the Broncos are going to the Super Bowl. So, you're leaning the Chargers, which I hate. I'm still leaning towards the Broncos. We've had a message come in here on the YouTube chat. It says every year we think the Chargers look good, much like the Cowboys. The Broncos look hot and they have lovely uniforms. Thank you for getting in touch, Little Red Cloud. Yeah, those throwback uniforms were absolutely lovely. Really, really liked those on Sunday, and it worked clearly. So I hope you're right. Every year the Chargers do look good, and every year I get optimistic, and then every year it peters out somehow, usually in devastating fashion in the playoffs. If we
Yeah.
get to that stage, but this is the year. This year, no, we're riding. We're feeling confident. We've talked way too much, and we probably only go for an hour. But so we'll try and whistle through the NFC.
NFC East is going to be fairly straightforward. I'm not too worried about that one.
Yeah, okay. Let's do it that way then. NFC East. In a word, the Eagles.
I think the thing here is how much can the Eagles rest up whilst winning the division?
Yeah.
Because if they can then get to the playoffs, regardless of how well they're playing, and be physically fit like they were last year and seasons prior, then they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in a slightly weaker feeling NFC East in some ways. So, yeah, I think they will walk their division at this point. And yeah, so Chris in the live feeds, sorry, Chris, but Washington, I think, it's going to be a long season of we're going to blame injuries, but it's ultimately going to go into the record books as not maybe a playoff kind of a playoff season at this rate. So it's not looking good in that division for Washington.
No, and I think I didn't realize it was Chris. Chris, thank you for jumping in, and good timing as we're moving on to the NFC East. But yeah, the Commanders, I feel like there is this sense of. I think Chris even said this to me when we were talking during the first half of the Chiefs game the other night, that bring back last season in a way, because last season was so exciting, and I still think the future is bright. This isn't everything's gone to pot. The future's gone for the Commanders. It's far from that. But I think this season. Look, there's a long way. We're talking here at the mid-season point. The Commanders have 3 wins, and they have some games left on this schedule that are winnable games. They play the Dolphins, they play the Vikings. The issue is that they obviously have this double against the Eagles at the end, 2 of the last 3 games. And if the Eagles still need to win games, that's the question, as you just alluded to there, Jake. If the Eagles still need to win games and aren't resting at players, the Commanders could be in for a bit of a tough time in those last few games. But they seem to give the Eagles a game. We saw it in the playoffs last year, which was a closer game on paper than the scoreline suggested. So, yeah, I think that any of those teams, I say any of those teams, I don't mean any of those teams. I'm not talking, of course, about the Giants, even though there is some shoots of optimism for the future there. But I think the Cowboys and the Commanders could still have realistic playoff ambitions. But I think, as we say, that this is the Eagles' division to lose. I'm going to leave the NFC West till last because I think that one's really interesting. I think the NFC South is probably the next
I think
easiest
so. Yeah.
to decipher, because as we talked about right at the top of the show, we don't know what the Falcons are. They're not consistent enough. Looking here, the points scored. Wow, that's so much lower than I thought it was.
It's
Is that the
bleak, isn't
wor-
it?
is that the worst in the NFL? No, the Titans and the Raiders, but the Falcons have the third fewest points scored in the
So
whole NFL. That's crazy.
I have an admission, right, that I put a little cheeky tenner on the 8 divisional winners, probably back in week 4, perhaps. And that was off the back of the Ravens looking dreadful suddenly and losing Lamar Jackson for a period. That in itself, as we've already covered, doesn't look great now. And the other one was I thought the Falcons would win their division. The odds looked great, so this was gonna pay for my wedding, Phil. But obviously, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut loads of guests at this point because I based it off of the fact that the Falcons were meant to get better and better, and the Buccaneers had lost an entire offensive line at this point. Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, they were all going down. It was Emeka Ibuka and whatever Baker Mayfield could do. And annoyingly, that's what they've done.
Yeah, they have.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be the Buccaneers down the stretch. That bet is basically a sitting duck now. And I entirely hold the Falcons responsible for that, not my error of judgment. So, yeah, I think the Buccaneers will probably get better over the course of the season as they get more fit. And I would argue that they're probably, I mean, they're obviously going to almost kind of, they're definitely playoff bound at this point. We're at 6-2. It's hard to know how far they can go. It really is because there are bigger teams, the Packers, the Lions, and the Rams, maybe even the Seahawks. But they're really solid and they've beaten some really quality teams. They just won't go down. So yeah, I like the Buccaneers for the rest of the season. I wonder whether or not the Buccaneers are going to have a schedule whereby they could maybe challenge the Eagles for that bye. Is that an unrealistic take that the Buccaneers could put it together down the stretch
I don't think so
to
at all.
finish with a great record?
I think if you're a Buccaneers fan, if you're wanting that bye, the last 6 games of the season are all winnable. The Buccaneers' hardest run is their next 3 games. The Patriots, the Bills, and the Rams are all tough games. You could toss a coin on a few of those, or which way it goes. But after that, Cardinals, Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins, Panthers. A team
Yeah.
with genuine Super Bowl aspirations has to be winning 5 of those 6 games. Okay, maybe you slip up to the Panthers because the Panthers sometimes look good. Maybe the Falcons have their on day, but you really want to be winning 5 of those games. So I think they can challenge the Eagles for that number 1 seed, but that will come down to the next 3 weeks of how they get on against the Patriots, the Bills, and the Rams. They're obviously on bye this week. The Buccaneers. I say the next 3 weeks, not this week. That's starting. That's starting next week. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that's Bucks. The Bucks division. I said in our HuddleUK's NFC South preseason episode that I thought the Falcons would win, so I was on the same boat as you in that one.
I've got a stat very, very quickly before
Of
we move
course,
on.
you have a stat.
I've got a stat about this one. I know you didn't want heavy on stats, but this one I love because I absolutely love Levante David. I think he's so severely overlooked and underrated across the league. He now sits in 8th all time for combined tackles in the league, right? 8th all time in the league, right? He doesn't lead his own franchise record in tackles.
Really? That
So
is
he is
it.
8th all time, but 7th all time is Derek Brooks. So Derek Brooks played his entire career with the Buccaneers, got way more Pro Bowl and All Pro nods than Lavonte David. When a lot of fans probably don't see the gap being that large. But yeah, I just feel like Lavonte is even overlooked when he's at the top 10 in tackles all time in the league,
Not even top of
but
his own
isn't even
franchise.
top of his own franchise. And there's
What's
32
what's
franchises.
the gap in numbers? Do you know? Do you have it
So
in
he
front of
will overtake him possibly this season. So the gap is quick maths, 54 tackles.
you? Okay, so doable.
Injury free, it's entirely doable, and they've played the exact. Come the end of this season, they'll have played the exact same number of years. And funnily enough, come into the league, and they're exactly the same age during those periods as well. But yeah, I find that fascinating that he's so dominant in the league, but technically not even within his own franchise. So there you go.
Lots of symmetry. Lots of symmetry. I like it. I like it. Let's do NFC North before we get to the West to round it off.
Yeah.
Are we happy to just quickly disregard the Bears and the Vikings?
Incredibly, I think probably is 4-3 the best record of a team that we then have said no. Well, the Jacksonville Jaguars we'd kind of dismissed a little bit.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
Bears are the best record that we're in. Well, the Panthers are 4-4, and we didn't even give them a look in.
didn't even touch. Yeah,
No, but I just think, and I don't think this. I did say that the Bears' defeat to the Snoop Huntley Ravens was a real bad indictment. I don't think this is a bad football team. I think there's still a chance that the Bears make playoff football this year, but I don't think they're in the conversation of the Lions and the Packers, which is why, in terms of
yeah,
discussing who wins this division, I don't think they hit that conversation. The Lions and the Packers is a great one. This is a great rivalry. I love the NFC North. I think it's my favorite division outside of the AFC West for just watching. Just as an NFL fan, I just love watching because, as I said when we did our NFC North HuddleUK episode, they just hate each other. These four. There's really a sense of we really don't like each other. And I know, like Chris, who was just in the chat as a Commanders fan, he hates the Eagles, and most divisions have that rival. They have hate week between the Falcons and the Saints, but this NFC North quadruple, they really don't like each other.
yeah.
So the Lions and the Packers will be a great rivalry for moving forward for the end of this season. It's two great offenses with two good defenses. Packers now 3 wins in a row. Tucker Kraft looked unbelievable last week, and he, as you well know, his stack with Jordan Love helped me win in our fantasy league. From the depths of like a 10% chance. So I love Tucker Kraft now, but the Lions are great as well. So which way do you see this one leaning? Because I don't think I can disagree with you either way here.
So I think from a Packers side of things, have we seen everything that we expect to see from a LaFleur offense with Jordan Love running it with the weapons that he's got? I think the answer to that is probably yes at this point. If they can take it to another level, I don't know how or why that would necessarily suddenly change down the stretch. The Lions, on the other hand, okay, admittedly, they lost their offensive and their defensive coordinators this offseason. So I don't expect massive, we haven't seen massive scheme changes, but you would traditionally expect that as you start the season, you look a little bit rough, you improve over the course of the season. So for me, I'm going with the Lions. I think that they have more room to grow as a team to really solidify that. And the Packers just, for a team that's 5-1-1, they haven't looked particularly cohesive and enjoyable to watch, which is going to be fine come the playoffs because nobody's really going to care about that. But I think for the rest of the division, I think it'll be the Lions for me.
That's fair. I think the only thing I would say in counter to that, and it's not that I disagree, I really can't split this one. I will say that I think, having watched the Packers on Sunday, the return of Christian Watson is a bigger boost to them than I think people expected it to be. He looked really good on Sunday, and in Christian Watson, he's going to come down with another injury in the next month. But having him back, I think he was sort of a forgotten guy in this wide receiver room of Golden and Dobbs and that guy whose name I never remember. Bo Melton is it as well. There's so many random guys.
Dontavian Wicks.
There's so many guys here. And I think because of his injuries, he just kind of got forgotten about. But that rookie season he had, he was excellent. I can't remember. I think he scored 9 touchdowns, but I'm going to have to look that up because I was probably wrong here. But he was very, very good, whatever it was in the rookie season. Let's have a look. What was it? How many was it? It was 7. I wasn't far off. But he got 7 in 4 games in that season. And I remember thinking this guy is going to be great for the future. Obviously, injuries have then impacted him. But I think having him back was a big boost. And you said, have we seen the best out of the Packers potentially? Whereas we haven't maybe seen the ceiling of the Lions. But I think we like cliches on this show. But the whole cliche is if you're winning games when you're not playing well.
Yeah.
When you then start putting everything together, you're a dangerous outfit. And I think Josh Jacobs continues to be one of the more underrated running backs in the whole NFL.
Yeah.
The guy was the rushing yards leader a few seasons ago, and when people talk about the best rushers, he continually gets overlooked. He reminds me, I'm not comparing these two and how they're playing currently at the level, but in terms of Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs, these guys can play solid, great football week in, week out. And unless they do what Jonathan Taylor's doing now, which is insane levels,
Yeah.
LaDainian Tomlinson levels of insanity, unless you do that, they just kind of always go behind your CMCs and your Barclays in terms of the news feed. So, yeah, I got a lot of time for Josh Jacobs. I'm glad he doesn't play for the Raiders anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. If I had to put my money on it, I would agree with you that I think the Lions edge it, but I would not be in any way surprised if it is the Packers who take it. Final division, we've got through this an hour in. Thank you for if you've been staying with us or if you've just jumped in at any point. Remember, if you've got any questions, we will answer them once we've got through the end of this division. The NFC West is where we're rounding up today's episode. A really, really interesting one where, much like the AFC West, there are three teams who... I say three teams. There are three teams on paper currently with 5 wins. The Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. The Cardinals have lost 5 in a row, and even though they've got some players that I very much like, you know me, I love me a bit of Trey McBride. I don't think the Cardinals have got a chance of winning the division this year. It would be almost a miracle from that point. And what I'd love to be a 3-horse race between the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers, I think unfortunately can't be because of the injuries sustained by the 49ers. Because Kyle Shanahan was in line for, was a coach of the year candidate for a while with how he was keeping this team competitive with all the injuries they had. But did you catch parts of that game against the Texans on Sunday?
I mean, it was hard to. It was hard to get glimpses. Didn't you message me at some point and say what is going on? And then immediately Scott Hansen on Red Zone admitted to everybody that the 49ers just haven't had the ball.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to see if I can find the statistic here, but it was the number was absolutely insane. But I think in the first 30 minutes, as in the first half of football, the Texans had the ball for 24 minutes. I think it was, which was a record for about 20 years in the NFL. The 49ers just couldn't get the ball. And I think a lot of that it goes back to what I said earlier about how good this Texans defense is. I really think it does. But at halftime, I think Christian McCaffrey had 2 touches for 5 yards. And as good as Christian McCaffrey is, you can't carry an entire offense on your own. With all the injuries they've had, I swear every single week I look at one of my fantasy teams that has Ricky Pearsall in, and it says questionable to return, and I'm really excited. And then by Friday he's out again. Why is he not on IR? Anyway, that's a separate rant.
But this is a guy, by the way, who literally was less questionable going into last season. He got shot.
Yes,
like he got shot, and we had more assurances over when he was going to feature than this season.
Yeah.
When you're looking at it going, if you could just be fit, you'd be wide receiver 1 in a Shanahan offense.
Yeah.
Like it's just
I don't quite understand what's going on there. It's as the owner of him in a paid fantasy league, he's not played since week 4. Week 3 he had 11 targets and over 100 yards. He's played 4 games and he's topped 100 yards in 2 of them, and then he hasn't played for 4 straight weeks and he's still not on IR, and he 16 hours ago got ruled out for this week. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening with that guy.
I mean, one reason he might not be on IR is there is only a certain number. I think it might be 8. There's only a certain number of players that you can place on IR and bring back in a season.
So maybe the 49ers have got the.
And I think the 49ers are running out of IR slots. In all honesty, that may well be it.
Would you agree with that theory though that I just sort of alluded to, which that I'd love this to be a 3-horse race? But I don't give the 49ers a chance. Not because I doubt their full strength. At full strength, this is easily a 3-horse race, and they might arguably be the favourites. But I don't think they can win the division given what they currently have.
Well, they've lost their best player, which is never good. Fred Warner's done for the year, and that is he was their X factor. Across the entire team. So you also lose that play calling element on the, he had the green dot. He would cover for so much of what Shanahan wanted to do. So I am expecting over the course of the season that the 49ers defense is it's a Salah run defense now. It's a solid one, but I do expect it to take a step back. I don't expect them to compete for the division like you say. I expect it to be the Rams and the Seahawks down the stretch. And you know what's really fun about this division is that they face the NFC South a lot and the AFC South. So they're going to win an awful lot of games. I would not be surprised if both of those teams are pushing early teens in their records. This is a bit like the NFC North last season.
Yeah. So we laughed again in our WhatsApp group. Me and Bo, who was on a few weeks ago, we've got a joint fantasy team where we've got Puka Nakua and JSN, and Sleeper's Twitter account put out a poll: who would you prefer going forward rest of the season, Puka or JSN? I was like, well, it's a lovely position to be in that I don't have to decide because we have both of them. And who would you prefer? Genuinely, which wide receiver? Because I've said early on in the season that I think Puka Nakua is the best wide receiver in football. Then he got injured. JSN's numbers, as we mentioned last week, are above anyone's by a country mile, and looks like he can play at all levels of the field. Who would you want on your team?
I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, I would take JSN, and I think there's a reason for that. I think when you look at the fact that the Rams brought in Devontae Adams, and Adams leads the league in end zone or red zone targets for a reason. When the Rams get close, they clearly favour Adams over Puka for one reason or another. I love Puka's physical game, and he's obviously a regular target of Stafford, but he's not necessarily the same field stretcher that JSN is. And if you want JSN to just run you a 10-yard kind of curl route to get you exactly what you need, great. If you also need him to go deep, he can do that as well. Maybe he's not as effective in the blocking game as Puka Nakua physically, but I think the upside of JSN is slightly higher than Nakua in that sense. But I mean, we're splitting hairs there. I'd take either. As a Bills fan, this is torture.
You'd be happy
Asking a Bills fan who you'd rather, and it's like I would take a one-legged Puka Nakua. I really would.
Devontae Adams, wouldn't you?
I would take them all.
Yes,
I would take them all.
Yeah, fair enough. You would lean JSN, but I don't know. This is just a vibe I get from you. But I feel like you would lean the Rams in this divisional race, though.
Ooh, really? You think I'm going Rams?
Well, I don't know. That's just a vibe I got. Am I wrong? Are you leaning Seahawks?
So I think it's really difficult. I was looking at the schedule thinking that, hopefully one of them has a particularly easier schedule than the other. It doesn't really feel that way.
No.
What I don't love about the Rams is this kind of Jekyll and Hyde element that you just... They've had some stinkers. What were they doing losing to the 49ers on Thursday Night Football? That was a shocker. I do like the Rams defense. I think that's an ascending defense where when you look back, if the Rams were to win the Super Bowl, I know they are your NFC pick to meet the Broncos.
What? Yeah, the preseason bet. Yes,
preseason.
Yeah.
But if they were to do that, you'd look at that defense with the talent that they've got across that defensive line, and you go, yeah, makes complete sense. Like we've seen it time and time again. The Eagles' defense was like that last season. The Chiefs the year before that was like that. So it makes complete sense that defense would tailor very nicely with their offense. But I'm a big fan of Mike McDonald and the Seahawks defense that he's got. The Seahawks are very much the Colts of the NFC.
I feel like each week you make a lovely Colts comparison that I create the videos for social media. So hold on. What's this? It's the Seahawks are the Colts of the NFC.
Yeah. So you look at it and you go, is Sam Darnold a top 5 quarterback? No. Is he a top 10 quarterback? No. Like I think a lot of people would look at that and go, on his day maybe, but how often does he? He's having a lot of days recently, but not always. JSN's a superstar. That's fine. Kenneth Walker. No one's really writing home about Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker anytime soon, like they are with some of the other running backs we've discussed, like Josh Jacobs. That team feels like it's cohesive. It's tight. They know what they're doing. they're again greater than the sum of their parts, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They've got some stars, but they're also, they also just seem to be getting the job done. And I think with that, they're very similar to the Colts. That other than Jonathan Taylor, we've already discussed it technically last week that they don't necessarily have superstar receivers in the same way that some of the other teams do. So and they just seem to be putting results together as a cohesive kind of ball team. So I like the Seahawks. I'm kind of and I think that they they probably have a bigger home advantage as well than the Rams. And I think down the stretch that is going to be, if you think about when we get into the winter. The Seahawks are going to have that advantage of bringing a team to them, whereas if you're an LA-based team, that isn't quite the same advantage, other than the time zone difference. So,
yeah, fair enough. I lean the Rams still because I sort of said when we were doing the AFC West, I'm a stubborn type, but. Yeah, I love the Seahawks. I said last week, didn't I, how much I've been enjoying watching them play. One of my favourite teams to watch this season. So I wouldn't, much like the NFC North, I wouldn't, you're splitting hairs between two very good teams. Just for the sake of my preseason prediction looking good, I'm going to stay with Broncos Rams and ride that until one of them's kicked me off. But interesting. Jake, we were going to run through some of the games this week in detail, but we've dragged this on far too long. So
we have.
What we'll do instead is, and I know you're a big fan of the Dominic Foxworth podcast, which is a massive podcast. I'm sure you will listen to that as well. Former Broncos cornerback, on the topic of Broncos. He has a segment on his show. We are completely stealing this. This is not ours. I want to make that very clear. This is all from Dominic Foxworth's podcast, where they name their good game of the week, their good bad game of the week, and their bad game of the week. And we'll in 3 minutes try and sum up our picks for that. What the good bad and bad games of the week are going to be. I'm going to start off with what I think will be a bad game.
Okay.
And I'm calling it the Injury Bowl, unfortunately. And I think that's the Giants against the 49ers.
Yeah.
And I'd like both of these teams, and I don't have any ill feeling towards either of these teams. I just think missing Scatterbo, I'm not inspired by Tyrone Tracy. With everyone missing for the 49ers, do you want to see Mac Jones or whoever it is throwing passes to Tonjes? I don't know. I just think this has the capability of being a real turgid game where there's not much on the line. There's not a lot of excitement. So that would be my bad pick of the week. What would be yours?
Yeah, I'm going Jags versus Raiders. For a couple of reasons, really. Obviously, we've just lost Travis Hunter. Brian Thomas doesn't look himself. The Jags are going East Coast over to West Coast, which is not ideal as well. And neither offense has really looked particularly solid. Both defenses have looked like decent enough that I think they will stifle the game. And I think this is going to be one of the late window kickoffs. I think we're going to be watching the other two games and then getting a brief update that one of the teams here has reached the end, the red zone and things like that. So I can see that playing out as a bit of a, turgid affair.
Yeah, that was my other pick. Those were the two I was between. My good bad game, I think, is the Monday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the Cardinals. I think could be a really fun game to watch, if not filled with excellent football, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. This feels like two teams on offense who could move the ball quite well against porous, I think is a nice way of describing the defenses of these teams. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily high quality on both sides of the ball, but I think it could be an entertaining game at least. Between that one and the Bengals Bears were the two that I was looking at for this one. What's your good bad game?
So exactly that. The Bengals Bears is again, to put it, to steal your kind of adage there, incredibly porous. Neither team can stop, particularly the passing kind of attacks of opposition. Now, sounds like we're losing Joe Flacco for this game. Just something else for him to come back from again. So But I do think that probably Jake Browning can step in here and look serviceable against this Chicago team. I would expect Caleb to bounce back from a rough affair against Miami to look good against Cincinnati. So I think this is going to be a bit of a pillow fight of a game between two teams that just aren't very serious outfits at the moment, but will probably be able to put up points on each other.
I'll give you massive bonus points that don't exist if you can tell me who the backup quarterback is going to be for the Bengals on Sunday.
Oh, good Lord.
The man has thrown one pass in his career and had 3 rushing attempts for -2 yards.
I've got no idea, actually.
I wouldn't expect you to. His name's Sean Clifford.
Okay.
Former Packers, 27 years old, is slated to be the backup quarterback this week for the Bengals.
Wow.
Good. Well, if you're not a Bengals fan and you knew the answer to that, I tip my hat to you. And then, are we going to be in agreement on what the good game of the week is?
Well, I don't know. So, part of me is tempted to say the Broncos Texans for the sickos out there that like to see defense and watch the all 22 of a game.
That's kind of the inverse of the Cowboys Cardinals game, isn't it?
It is. So I'm inclined to say that could be a good game, but for the fact that the Texans offense hasn't kind of really been particularly solid, but actually we've kind of seen some shoots recently, the likes of Woody Marks, obviously Nico Collins coming back as well. Has been kind of really good for the Texans. So I actually think that the Broncos Texans for the I say the sickos, the people that really want to see a tactical affair. I think that game could be a good one, which sets you up nicely for what I think you're going to say, which you may have wanted me to say.
Well, I thought you were going to say it, but I think the game of the week, which it always tends to be a good game, and I know that the result doesn't always be a good thing for you, but the Chiefs Bills has to be the good game of the week. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It could be a steaming pile of dung, but I hope this is a good game. It tends to be a good game between these two teams. Yeah. For the listeners, I'm playing Jake in a dynasty league this week as well, with 1 point projection difference between the two of us. And you have Josh Allen and I've got Patrick Mahomes, which I'm very intrigued to see how that one plays out, just to add a little bit more spice to you being a Bills fan. So that'll be fun on the weekend. That's my pick for the good game of the week.
We're 4-0 in the regular season over the last, I think, since 2021 against the Chiefs.
And in the postseason?
That's all, folks. We'll see you next week. We are 0-4. Thank you for reminding me so quickly of that.
Well, that's fine. Had to bring you back down straight away when you said that. Yeah. That is all, folks, though. We've dragged this on that longer than we thought. Jake, thank you very much for jumping on. Again, those have been our predictions that we'll be able to clip up and make ourselves look fools out of. You can go read all of our stuff over at the HuddleUK website. Find us on all social medias at Join the HuddleUK. Jake will be having his DFS predictions or top tips of this week. Hopefully Bijan Robinson or whoever we pick as the captain this week will do better than whatever happened last week. Really appreciate you joining for this first ever live stream of the HuddleUK podcast. We will see you next Sunday. We'll be back for another pre-recorded episode. But until then, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.